What are you doing, Daddy? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Starting tonight's story with Nova. That's right, everybody. It's time for another sunset story. This is going to be a really good one. I highly advise you to get yourself a nice, cool drink or a warm drink, whatever the case may be. Maybe you're gargling with, hot water or hot salt water. Maybe you're drinking wine, drinking a little vino. I drank too much vino. I don't get to drink vino anymore. Boy, I tell you. I said to Allie the other day, it's a lucky thing I don't drink wine anymore because, good golly, I don't own any stock in any vineyards, and that's what would be required, see? There you go. Nice. I'm going to tell an amazing story today. This is one of my greatest hits, I would have to say. Seen one of my stories yet? This is definitely a greatest hit. While you're settling in, in yesterday's story or the day before, somebody asked for one of my college stories. This is a college story. And it's a very good one. This story is really the most important thing I ever learned. It's the most important thing I ever learned. Now, when I was in junior high school, I read a book. I'm not really quite sure what book it was. It was about some fabulous international business tycoon. And he had gone to someplace called the Wharton Business School. And I thought to myself, good golly, is that a real place? And I went and I climbed up to the top shelf of the bookcase. And I grabbed the W encyclopedia book. And for those of you who don't know, because you're too young, an encyclopedia was like Google in books. And this W book, I cracked it open and I looked. And sure enough, there it was. The Wharton Business School. This was the finest business school in the whole world, where the richest tycoons of business would send their children to be educated about how to make money. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a real place? If that's a real place, then I want to go there. See, I went to a special math science high school, right? I went to this place in New York City called Stuyvesant High School. And everybody from my high school got into college. Everybody went to college. It wasn't a question of was I going to go to college. Of course I was going to go to college. The only question in my mind was, which college am I going to go to? And what did I know? I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I wasn't wealthy. We weren't wealthy. Like, we had enough money to pretty much do whatever I wanted to do. I didn't have very expensive tastes. Growing up, I always used to buy my own clothes, and I would go to thrift stores and I would go to Army Navy supply stores because that was just what I liked. I just didn't have the taste for expensive clothes. Like my brother, he would always go shopping at Barney's, and my parents would pay for that. But I would buy my own army jacket from a thrift store. Well, lo and behold, I go to the Wharton Business School and I get in early decision. I just got off the phone just now talking to my high school buddy who also got in early decision, Tommy Leonardi. and he went to Penn, early decision with me, and we both pledged the same fraternity, surprisingly, just out of the blue. And when we were pledges at that fraternity, one night, a professor came over. And as pledges, we would go and eat dinner at the house every Sunday night. It was jacket and tie, Sunday night dinner, every Sunday. And one night, we had this professor come over as a guest. And his name was E. Digby Baltzell. He was old. He had all white, he had what you would call a shock of white hair, thick. And he wore a tweed blazer with corduroy patches on the elbows, and a bow tie. He looked like an Ivy League professor, and he was the epitome of Ivy League professors, one of the legendary professors on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania. And when I heard that he was coming to dinner, my friend Chip Baggio was talking about how cool this guy Digby Baltzell was. He's like, oh man, he is the coolest professor. And you know why? He invented the word W.A.S.P. I'm like, what do you mean invented the word W.A.S.P.? He invented that word. He wrote about it in one of his books, Social Stratification in America. And when he was writing about social stratification in America, he came up with this term, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and it became part of popular culture. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know a person could invent a word like that. Yeah, he did that. And the reason why he is so cool is because he comes here and he comes and has dinner at our fraternity. He doesn't go to any other fraternities to have dinner. You know why? Because he realizes that we are the coolest. So Digby Baltzell comes, and we have dinner, and we sing our songs. And the president makes a speech welcoming him. And after dinner, Digby Baltzell gets up and speaks. And he says, what I appreciate so much about this fraternity is that you boys don't select your membership based on religious or ethnic or even financial criterias as many of the other fraternities do. Basically, he was saying what our philosophy was. Our philosophy was, if you were cool, then you were in the castle. That's what it was all about. Now we fast forward. That was in my sophomore year of college. And one of the greatest parts about going to the Wharton Business School is that the Wharton Business School encouraged diversity. They encouraged diversity in everything. If you were to look at the college guidebook, the Wharton School and University of Pennsylvania write-ups in the guidebook talked about how they encourage a diverse student body, encouraging extracurricular activities and racial and ethnic and geographic diversity. And that drive for diversity continued even when you're in the school. The Wharton Business School allowed me to take up to 50% of my classes outside of the Wharton Business School. That was like one of the greatest things about it. So in my senior year, for example, my second semester of my senior year, I was taking mergers and acquisitions. I was taking managing people. I was taking nutrition. I was taking oil painting. and I was taking SOC 10, Social Stratification in America, with E. Digby Baltzell. And at the beginning of the class, Digby Baltzell comes in, and I'm there in the front row as usual because I was a straight A student, and I'm dressed in my suit and tie because I did an experiment and I found that when I wore a suit and tie to class, I would get higher grades. I would get all A's, and if I didn't wear a suit and tie, I wouldn't get A's. Why that is? A lot of reasons. Partially because the teachers looked at me different, partially because I looked at myself different. But I wrote about this at length in my book, What They Teach You at the Wharton Business School. And basically, it's a combination of what the world sees and what you expect from life. And I remember the first day of the class, Digby Baltzell says, if you are a graduating senior in this class, then you are automatically guaranteed at least a gentleman's C. Regardless of whether you show up or take any tests, if you're a graduating senior, you automatically have a gentleman's C. However, if you are a graduating senior in my class, there will be two midterms and a final. And if you get an A on any one of the midterms or the final, you automatically are guaranteed an A in the class. And you need not come anymore because you're locked into an A. Now, there's one thing about me, anybody who really knows me knows that I love learning, I love being a student, I love studying, I love going to class, I love all of that. And I love my honey. Naturally, I would go to Digby Baltzell's class every day, even though I was a graduating senior. And then I took the first midterm, and of course, I got an A, as a lot of my friends got A's who were graduating seniors. But the difference is that I continued to go to the class. Every single class that he taught, I felt like it was a privilege for me to be learning from a living legend, not just at the university, but on a pop cultural level. And as the weather got nicer, here we are in March. I was talking to Tommy Leonardi today. He told me it was 78 degrees in Philadelphia yesterday. As you get into the end of March, April, it gets to be nice. A lot of seniors start disappearing out of Digby Baltzell's class. They're out on college lawn getting suntans. But not me. I continue to show up in the first row week after week in my suit and tie. Because I know that it is a privilege to have a living legend as a professor. It comes to be the last day of the last class. I already have an A in the class. I know that. I'm exempt from the other midterm. I'm exempt from the other final. From the final, I already have an A. But I go to the last class because this is the last class that Digby Baltzell's ever going to teach. He retires after this. And I remember sitting down in the front row and looking up at Digby Baltzell with his shock of white hair, and his tweed jacket, and his corduroy patches on his elbows, and his bow tie, Brooks Brothers shirt. And as he begins to prepare to settle the class down, I notice he gets a really wistful look in his eyes. And everybody gets quiet. And Digby Baltzell says, "You want to know how you know you've led a successful life? And I'm like, if by the time you die, you have one true friend, that's how you know you've led a successful life. And I'm like, I'm looking at him. He's just staring off with a 1,000-yard stare. And I could tell that he was thinking of his one true friend, his wife. I could tell. Now, those of you who know, I've had tumultuous relationships in my life. I have a daughter. Her mom kicked me out of the house when she was a year old. And there was a period in my life when I thought I was never gonna have a wife. But when I met my wife of 16 years, by the way, Allie, I thought to Digby Baltzell. I thought back to that day in SOC 10, sitting in the first row, and to my understanding that Digby Baltzell defined a successful life by having a single true friend by the time you die. And that for him, I knew that friend to be his wife. And that was one of the major considerations that I took into my whole equation of, do I want to get married? Do I want to get married to Allie? Do I want to partner my life with anyone? Well, a big part of that came from that day. Because, as anybody who knows me knows, I want to be successful. Hey, if you enjoyed this story, tune in tomorrow. Check the time of the sunset. Whenever the sunset happens, I will be telling stories. I usually start around 15 minutes before the sunset. And I'll be back with another great one tomorrow night. Until then, everybody, be smart, be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.